Yay. All right. Hey, good evening, everyone. Jan Edwards with Paving the Way Foundation. And I have one of my most favorite human beings with me today. I'm going to let Detective Joseph Scaramucci give you a little bit of his background and bio. What we're
Oh
talking
gosh.
about tonight is I make you brag about yourself because I know I'm going to forget something, okay? Just so we're clear about that. But Joe and I, it's so funny how this is really where the power of social media. Okay.
Yeah.
Joe and I connected via LinkedIn and we went toe to toe on a couple of conversations. And I'm like, you know what? Anybody that's going to stand toe to toe with me deserves props. Right. And he was still very respectful, which I appreciated. And then we ran into another circle and just really watching what you do and what you stand for is what had you be nominated and win the Polaris Star um, Law Enforcement Officer of the Year. Because there are not a whole lot of law enforcement officers out in the world that have the same level of care and concern for survivors that you do. And also, too, really your stand for authenticity and transparency with NGOs. So that's pretty much when I fell in love with who Joe Scaramucci is online, and then got to meet him and spend some time with him and just truly appreciate who he is in the world. So that's who you are for me. And
Yeah.
now you can give them the details of what you do on the daily and why. Really, why am I talking to you about this? Because you have a little bit of expertise. So
Yeah. My background's a little diverse, a little different. So obviously we met through the trafficking community. Been doing trafficking,
anti-trafficking
anti-trafficking,
community.
anti-trafficking. I'm not in the trafficking community. I am in
No.
the put trafficking community in prison
Yes.
community. Yeah. So, I've been doing human trafficking investigations since 2014. Completely stumbled into them. Prior to that, so I've been in law enforcement 18 years. Back in 2008, I shifted to investigations. Very quickly moved into homicide, basically all deaths, and sex crimes. So I got to see really a robust side of life, right? So people at their absolute worst, which is horrible. But it really, I think, did a lot for me personally in that, regardless of beliefs, it really shifted my religious focus in a very good way for me. But then also, it really taught me compassion, right? So I think it's hard for law enforcement. We try to detach, we try to push away, but humans are humans, and when you deal with people at the absolute worst point in their life, it really hurts in a good way. It's not, it's a good thing, but to know that you're hurting for somebody else. So I did several years from 2008 to 2014. I did death investigations in sex crime. In that, I obviously had kind of the theme for tonight, dating violence, and I had cases, one in particular that stands out, that was a teen dating violence case that was an attempted homicide. It luckily didn't work. But then shifting into human trafficking in 2014, we were in a really unique position. I have an administrator or sheriff that is really open and just, hey, you do your thing. So we got to push back on status quo. We didn't have to go with the whole, hey, we keep arresting victims, we throw them in jail, we hope that they cooperate. We didn't have to deal with that. And I would love to say it was my idea. It wasn't, but I had a really good partner at the time. And in our talks, we were like, look, we tell murder victim stories
Yeah.
on their behalf. Like, let's do it for trafficking. So, we got to shift, we got to do that in trafficking, and it's been a really good thing. But as far as my background, it's really diverse in law enforcement. In addition to those things, I've done aviation for many years. So I was on SWAT for 13 years and all kinds of good stuff.
Like if I start doing the math, you started in law enforcement when you were 12.
You would think when I was 12, right? The other thing about that is most people don't realize I was in the Marine Corps before that. So,
Oh my God.
yeah, so,
See, that's just crazy to me. It's just crazy to me. You've lived like 15 lives in a very short amount of time.
Yeah, and I'm gonna die very early as a result.
No, 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 you're not. No, you're not. No, you're not. No, you're not. If we have anything to say about it, we want you around for a real long time. You're extraordinary. I want to go back to what you do inside the anti-trafficking community, because you spend a lot of time, we were comparing cities. We actually were across cities the last time I saw you in Louisiana. I would love for people to really get a sense of when you travel, why you travel, and the trainings that you do, right? So, because I think that's a part of, we just were having a conversation before we hopped on live about a current situation that's happening here in our city, and it happens everywhere. So let's talk a little bit about the training you do and why it's important, and then we'll kind of get into the meat of the conversation about teen dating violence.
Yeah, so oh gosh, why I travel? I feel the most effective way to do things, right? So the way that we operate here is completely tech and intelligence and data driven. So as an example, I have a warrant that I got yesterday on a trafficker that I've never even put eyes on him. I've never even put eyes actually on his victim. I can only build the entire case around them. So by the time we even knock on the hotel door, he's wanted, she's not, and we get to have a really good conversation. A lot of that has led to, it's kind of multifaceted, I guess. So the sheer amount of trafficker arrests that we have is astronomical compared to most agencies, which then garnishes attention, right? So like, how are you doing this? How are you, as an example, Waco, Texas, having more trafficker arrests in 2020 than Houston, Texas, which is the 5th largest state in the entire city in the entire country?
Yeah.
And it's because we're not chasing the wrong thing. We're chasing traffickers, not trafficking victims. When it comes to the travel and working with these agencies and being able to really share that word, most often they reach out and they're literally like, hey, what is it that you're actually doing? Because this makes no sense. It's not status quo. It's not normal. It's not prostitution based. So we get to get out there and really not only train and do the typical classroom, whatever, but then at the end of most trainings, be able to physically sit in a hotel and do the operations. Because I can tell you all day, A, B, C, D, E. But for most law enforcement, if it goes A, B, E, they're like, we don't know what to do because we skip C and D. Victim needs to go to jail. So we're able to really sit with them and be like, A, B, C, E. Okay, let's go back. Let's fill in D. Here's where. Let's go from there. And it really, just I think goes to outside the box thinking, really to no credit myself, I can tell you that. But I don't take no for an answer very often, which I know. So when people tell me we can't do this, my first question is why? Why can't we do this?
Why not?
And if it's because it's against the law, fine. If it's because it's immoral, I'm good with that. If it's because we've never done it, that's not an acceptable answer. If it's because we tried it once and it failed, that's also a not acceptable answer. So it's really like, what can we do to make it better and just keep moving forward? And the beauty is honestly that we get to see what's working and what's failing all over and then mix and match those. So like, hey, it didn't work here, but it worked here. So let's try it in the third place or,
right. Well, and failure is not fatal, literally and figuratively, because if you don't try something and have the conversations, in particular with law enforcement, I had the opportunity to meet in person Andrea Sparks last week. And, one of the conversations we actually had, the three of us had on LinkedIn, was about how do you bring compassion and empathy to law enforcement? Because the thinking is these are just prostitutes, right? And when I'm in school, when I'm in classes with kids, and I get that same thing, because we have a strip here, we have OBT here in Orlando, right? And they'll be like, well, what about, they'll get all saucy. And I say, let me ask you a question. Do you think really, Just want you to do the thinking. Don't pop off with an immediate, well, no, just do the thinking. Do you really think that someone would choose, and I'm talking choice, not force, fraud, or coercion, not because it's the way to feed my family, but really choose to be raped 15 to 25 times a night? And then I don't say anything because I want them to do the thinking. And it's the same kind of conversation to have with frontline law enforcement, because I believe it's like this. There's been this training of life is a particular way, and then when you're in the middle of it, it's like, oh my God, this is a 15-year-old girl. There's no way she chose this.
Yeah, I think law enforcement is interesting, and I think you know as well as I do. I'm a very strong critic of law enforcement, and I get to be because I am law enforcement, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that kind of going to back to what you said. Yes, we look at something that we believe it to be true, and we've always believed it to be true, right? The girl is out doing this because I saw a news article recently, and it was out in California, and it was basically talking about the audacity of the quote prostitutes for that article, but the sex workers, the audacity they had that they were doing sex acts in vehicles in the street. And I'm like, whoa, okay, cool. What about the audacity of the guy who pulled over and let this go, right? I mean, the problem is we're looking at the entire situation, because looking at law enforcement is primarily male. We're looking at it through a male lens, which is a huge issue because I can't sell my body. I'm just going to go out on a limb and say it's not going to do me well. But, even worst case scenario, I don't know what that feels like. I can only base my observations off of what you tell me. And I recently sat with a young lady, and she was I don't even like using the term consensual, but she was involved in commercial sex, and she was not being trafficked.
Right.
And, she just sobbed. She was like, do you know what I feel like? And I just remember holding her hand, and I'm like, I don't. I just know what you're telling me and what you're pouring into me, that I can walk away from this and say, like, at least I know what it looks like. And it's tough. It's tough breaking through to law enforcement because we're all bullheaded.
Yes, you are. I'm not
but
then there's the ones that are awake enough to be like, hang on, stop, pause. If that was my daughter, would I interact with her like that? If that was my niece, if that was my young cousin, right, would I interact with them like that? Which is going to kind of bring me around to our topic tonight, teen dating violence. I have this extraordinary group of interns that they are masterful at just pounding out social media information every day, all day, because our mantra is educate, empower, prevent. I can't prevent something unless you actually know it's happening. I'm going to empower you to know what it looks like such that you can prevent it, right? Whoever the you are, whether it's a young child, whether it's a teenager, whether it's a parent, whether it's a teacher, right? And one of the statistics they found was 1.5 million teenagers, this was off the Love is Respect website, have experienced teen dating violence. I was shocked, okay? And then if I look back, my daughter had a girlfriend that had 2 dates, both off of one of the dating apps, not the sites, but the apps. And she was forced to do something on both dates. She didn't report it because she was embarrassed. So I want to talk about that. And the more we talked about it, the impact on her, it's, I don't know, I to this day, I don't know if she's ever gotten married, right? So you're talking about a young 20-something-year-old girl, so technically an adult, right? That had this trauma forced upon her at a very early age, and she didn't know what to do about it.
Yeah.
So let's start with the reality of teen dating violence, and we'll kind of work our way through. So we're going to start with the education piece, and then we're going to empower people with here's what to look for, here's kind of what happens, so we can help some parents and teens prevent this.
Yeah, I mean, in some ways that's tough. I think the biggest thing is when it comes to, and I say this for all forms of exploitation, not trafficking, not physical abuse, sexual abuse, any of it. You've got to have a relationship with your kid that you know when something's not right. Like that's bottom line. But yeah, I mean, I think we still live in a society where there's female victim blaming, right? And it
Yes.
doesn't matter, just even looking at that. Well, she shouldn't have been on the dating app. Well, he shouldn't have been on the dating
Yeah.
app. She shouldn't have had too much to drink. Well, he shouldn't have had too much to drink. Like, it's equal across the board, right? I mean,
It is.
it's mind blowing to me. And I mean, to be open and vulnerable, I had an issue where my now 21-year-old daughter called one night and was like, "I got a problem," and had it been any more than what it actually was, there's a good chance I would be sitting in Texas prisons at this point.
Yeah.
But I think kind of going back to what you were getting at earlier and talk about more. She had that phone call, right? She was able to call and be like, "This is what's going on. What do I do? How do I, deal with this?" And the reaction was, of course, involved a shovel and a shotgun, but
Well, just so we're clear, there's a reason why I'm on the prevention side. Okay.
yeah, okay.
All right. There's a reason why. And it's the same thing. I tell people that all the time. I'm like, look, I have a concealed carry. It wouldn't go well on the other. It's just safer to keep me over here with the young people and educating, because I'm the same way. It's like I have a justice streak in me. It's like, you are not going to mess with my kids. And I don't care whose kids they technically or biologically belong to. As an adult and as a responsible adult, those are mine. Like, these are my people, right? You're a human being. You're my people.
No, I think that the whole thing is, when we look at a preventative side of it, we have to teach young girls and women what's acceptable and not acceptable under any circumstance. I don't care what the circumstance is. More importantly, though, I think we have to teach young men and boys what's acceptable under any circumstance ever. And, I kind of got into a social media tiff with somebody because they were saying, well, what you're saying is fine. Like, we need to teach boys to keep their hands to themselves, but I'm always going to teach my daughter, to defend herself and all this. And I'm like, hey, that's cool. I get it. But if we can get rid of one, we don't have to worry about the other.
Yes.
And they were like, absolutely not. I'm like, no. If we can get away from ever having a male that thinks it's okay to put his hands on a female, or vice versa, then we don't have to worry about the female ever defending herself. There's no reason for it. Mm-hmm. And I'm all for, preventative stuff. But the reality is, if people keep their hands to themselves, we don't have to worry about self-defense, because it goes away at that point.
Right. Well, and it's interesting because I talk about this all the time. I give people assignments. Like, I went to the Alvin Ailey ballet last night, and 3 people that I talked to about it, they're like, who? I go, okay, when we hang up, you have an assignment. All right. You're going to go onto YouTube. You're going to look up who Alvin Ailey is, and you're going to watch one of the performances. I've known about Alvin Ailey forever. I saw him on PBS, right? Just so appreciate the art form. But it's the same kind of thing. There's 2 documentaries that I love. And it really, if you watch them both together, it kind of explains where we are right now. One is The Mask You Live In, and the other is Miss, MISS representation. I'll write it in the comments. And misrepresentation talks about the commoditization of women. So it talks about how we've been trained and taught through advertising, through media, through film, through commercials, through TV shows, that we're supposed to act a particular way, look a particular way in order to get what we want. Fill in the blank of what the want is, right? And then on The Mask You Live In, it talks about the suppression of male emotions. And it's the whole fight like a girl, you fight like a girl, throw like a girl, don't cry like a girl, all that whole thing. So by the time I'm prepubescent, 11, 12, 13, I've been trained that anything feminine, which quite frankly is any emotion other than happy or angry, is bad. Mm-hmm. And then I have these raging hormones flying through my body, I probably see some pornography and I figure out that's how it's supposed to be. I get my first girlfriend. Our girls are trained to be, well, you've got to do whatever it takes to get the man, right? And the guy's like, well, I guess this is what it's supposed to be. And you've got the perfect storm.
Yeah.
And
We,
so, and to me, if you watch both of those films together, you'll walk away with, okay, well, that explains a lot. And you
yeah.
can start to have those conversations with your young people.
No, totally. And that's an interesting, topic to bring up. Even from my end, I mean, talking about emotions, right? I mean, it's never fun for men. Once you get past that, it's totally cool. I mean, I think the way to do it, and it will make your life 100% better. I promise. So for any man that's on here, I promise you, start talking about it. It'll make it better. But we did an operation in Wyoming last year with some law enforcement agencies, and we had the Avery Center for Research and Services there. They were interviewing the buyers. They were talking about emotion. They were talking about all these things, right? So you get all these cops in a room talking about emotion. You get all these sex buyers talking about emotion. All this weird dynamic, right? Like we're all backpedaling. I'm like, oh my God, this is, I just want to go punch somebody in the face and drink some whiskey. But when we got done, we talked about it. And one of the cops said, and it really resonated, and it's very true. He said, as men, we're not supposed to feel anything other than anger or arousal, put it that way.
Or happiness, where you can be happy. You can
Yeah.
be.
And we were all like, wow, that's, for one, you recognize that in and of itself is huge, but it's true. When we look at men, I remember the first shooting I ever had, somebody, hey, you need counseling? No, I'm good. All right, cool. All right, bye. We're done. Like no more conversation, right? And it just, you never really, until you take a step back, I think, especially from the police side, you take a step back and you're like, what are these feelings that I'm actually having? And it's tough because looking at it from a trafficking perspective, a domestic violence perspective, all of these different perspectives, we're also looking at everything that's ever happened to us personally in life and applying it to what we're seeing. And, it's easy to say, well, I overcame this, but this happened in my life and I'm fine, even if you're not. Why is she doing this? And again, it always ends up going back to this kind of victim blaming mentality. And I don't want to say that that's representative of all law enforcement. I don't want to say it's across the board because there are some wonderful, wonderful cops that, want to do nothing more than help people, but they can also get caught up in the emotion of what's going on around them and may actually care about something, but give the impression they don't. And that's equally as dangerous, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. So, teen dating violence is real. You were telling me about a case. So can we talk about that a little bit? And then I
Yeah.
want to talk about, what are some things parents and, quite frankly, men and women can look for? Because it seems like, right, that the teen dating violence, domestic violence, trafficking, there's some similarities there about behaviors of the perpetrator. So let's talk a little bit about the case that you worked on, and then we'll come back around to, what we can start looking for.
Okay. Yeah. Man, I will never forget this case. And it's not, everybody always asks, like, what's the one that just stands out and, hurts you the most? It doesn't. It's actually not. I just will never forget. I got in a call one night when I was working, all crimes but deaths. And they said, we have a 15-year-old girl. She got shot in the head. She is going to die. Obviously you got shot in the head and like, that's what happens. She's out at this particular lake. This is, whatever. So I remember getting dressed and I was driving out and I was scooting along pretty fast going down the highway. And I could see from about the area of the lake, the helicopter taking off. So I knew that, obviously she was in it. Got out there. It was the most frigid, cold night I've ever had in my entire life. The there was, you pull up, there's a truck next to the lake, and her and her boyfriend had gotten in an argument. They had been going back and forth about something really trivial, honestly. And he told her, "I'm going to kill you." And she said, "No, you're not." And he told her, like, "I'm going to shoot you." And she said, "No, you won't." There were two other people in the truck. There was another vehicle behind theirs where he had his gun. So he went back, and to make it even more calculated, the SOB had a broken gun, to be clear. So he actually stood there and fixed the gun to make it fire. Got back in the car, in the truck, put it to the side of her head, point blank, shot her.
And she was 15.
She was 15. He was 17, I believe. Yeah, he was 17 at the time. So in the state of Texas, that's an adult. You go to big boy jail at 17. First patrol officer there, ironically enough, is standing there, and you can hear the sounds that people make when they're dying. And he said, "That's my cousin." And that was actually his second cousin that was laying there dying. All that to say, we processed the crime scene that night. I've never been so cold in my entire life. I remember the trees just blowing. It was so cold. Ended up interviewing the suspect. We got full confession off of him. He kind of played the whole, it was an accident, like I was going to threaten her, but then it accidentally went off. So we had him in jail that same night. I remember the next day, I had my now boss. I was training him on how to work, deaths. And I remember going to the hospital. We went to the trauma hospital south of us, and we took all the photographs. And I remember setting up certain photos, and he was like, "Why are you doing it this way?" She'd had pictures from other kids in the school all over the hotel room by then, or not the hospital room.
Right.
And I told him, I said, "These are the photos we're going to use to get a jury to feel sympathy when it comes to punishment. These are the ones we're going to use to really drive this home, and when she dies." She didn't. So Casey ended up before Christmas. This was around Thanksgiving. Before Christmas, she was discharging. She made a full recovery. Had come to our office, a couple times. She was on a walker, and then eventually got off the walker and graduated high school, the whole 9 yards. He went to trial. I believe he got 28 years in prison. But yeah, that particular case, I think, among a few others, especially surrounding different forms of gender-based violence, that one will always stand out. It was cool. I got to go, sit around and have a beer at the 21st birthday and, go to high school graduation and all those things that you unfortunately don't always get to go to. But I think looking back now, her recovery and her life really is the biggest FU to that guy that there could ever be. And I think it's amazing. I think, obviously she's going to do wonderful, wonderful things because I think somebody has a bigger purpose for her.
Sure. So I want to go back to when you interviewed her. Did she give you any kind of, well, he'd smack me occasionally or he'd yell at me occasionally? Like, what led up to this? Because, even inside the realm of the anti-trafficking space, okay, yeah. I'm clear. No one wakes up one morning and goes, "Yeah, I think I'm going to sell people today."
Yeah.
It doesn't happen like that, okay? So this is same thing with violence. This guy didn't just, whether there was alcohol or not or whatever, he just didn't decide. This wasn't the first violent act he had.
No, so we'll have to shift a little bit because by the time I got to interview her or even talk to her, like we'd gone through a whole process, right? That was as clear to near death as you can. One of the things that was really interesting, and it actually happened, the clinicians and everything said she is going to view him as a savior. He brought me this close to dying, but I didn't die. So it was really interesting how that worked in the immediate aftermath. So I don't think that that's fair to bring him up. There was a little bit, I think, of like pushing and pulling away, but there wasn't a ton of actual violence, or more violence anyway. In my experience, though, what I've always seen is, no, you're absolutely right. You don't just walk over and punch somebody in the face today.
No.
You end up, and I think it goes around all domestic violence and all human trafficking, whether it be teen, adult, labor, sex, whatever. It all boils down to two words. It's power and control. That's it. And you can't exercise power over somebody like that, right? It just doesn't work. If I was to go out on a first date and be like, "Hey, how you doing? Let me buy you dinner and a drink," and then punch you in the face, you would be like, "Absolutely not." Right? I think this is probably not going to work.
Right.
It's that building of trust, and then once that trust is built, it's the emotional takeover that occurs, and I think the emotional takeover is what ultimately leads to the prolonged and worse violence. And I think it kind of works both ways, right? So for the victim of domestic violence, even teen or adult, it's like it won't happen again. And we're always giving a little, and as we're giving a little, they're always taking a little. And I don't know that it's always intentional that they're taking a little. It's that I got away with, therefore I can get away with. And it just kind of perpetuates and it's that inch by inch by inch by inch by inch. And the next thing you know, kind of one of the things I've always brought up, and ironically enough, one of the trafficking survivors, Rebecca Bender, she brings up, and we just happened to cross bringing this up, was you don't throw a frog into boiling water. It'll jump out. You put the frog in the water and you slowly boil the water around it. And that's always how DV works. I mean, whether it be, through marriage or just teen dating violence, it's always going to be just a little bit at a time.
Yep. And I assert that there's a really close parallel to grooming and recruitment of children for exploitation. Similar behaviors are happening on the teen dating violence spectrum, right?
Yeah.
Because especially the past few years, I talk about this all the time, is trauma bonds. Terry, someone who's watching, said trauma bonds. Absolutely. Is the past 2 years have been hell on our children. It's been hell. And they're lonely, they're isolated, they're separated from their friends. When you would go to school every day with a new outfit or a new shirt or a new bag or new whatever, yes, women do like compliments, right? They'd be like, "Oh my God, I love your shirt." So all of that's missing because, you could be wearing pajama bottoms and some cute shirt, but no one's going to say anything. So
it's like me. I'm in running shorts right now. Y'all don't even realize I'm in running shorts. So yes.
See? Exactly. But you look good in the pink shirt. So you've got kids in that space that are missing that interaction. And then along comes someone, whether it's online or in person, telling them how beautiful they are, how smart they are, how handsome they are, how fill in the blank they are. And there's this hole that's missing, that this person's filling that cup up. And I think in teen dating violence, it's very, very similar. They slide in and they slide in more and they slide in more. And I love that analogy you gave that, they take an inch and these girls give an inch, or boys, right? There are women out there that play that game. So there's this continual give and take. So what are some signs that either teens can look for or parents can look for in their children when they're dating? Or, when my daughter's in high school, I used to tell her, I said, if someone asks you out and they want to do whatever with you, I said, your first date is dinner with me.
Yeah. Man, I would have liked you when I was in high school. I would have been like, I'm not taking you out on a date.
Yeah, if they're not willing to come have dinner with me, they do not have your best interest in mind, sunshine.
Yeah.
And of course she got angry and whatever, but after a while, as she got older, she got it. She started to understand they're walking hormones with arms and legs.
Yeah, that's the most eloquent way to put it. It's kind of goes back to what I said earlier. I think knowing your kids, right? That's to me the absolute biggest. I don't care what the problem is. I can look at my kid and know that something's not right. I may not know
Right.
what the answer is. I may not know what it is, but I can tell you something's not right. We can look at the obvious. We can, any signs of physical abuse. I I saw somebody today that I know has been in a domestic violence relationship, and we're iced in right now, and the response with that, I tripped on ice. I hope to God that's what it is, but I also recognize that that's probably not what it is.
Yep.
So I think those are big ones. I think too, and it's difficult with teens because it's easy for a teen to get like absorbed into something, right? I remember my little girlfriend when I was in middle school was like the most important thing in my life. Like we were going to get married and we were going to live together forever. Clearly
Right.
that won't happen. But being sucked in and away from people, being isolated from people, I get kids being isolated from their parents. That's teenage 101.
Yep.
But if they're being isolated from their friends and they're not spending as much time with their friends, or their friends are going, hey, you're never around us, like that's kind of a problem. That's odd. So I think those would definitely be red flags. I think, an immediate change in performance at school, things
Mm-hmm.
where I was really into, and I keep going back to females, and I understand that it happens to males, but primarily it happens to
Well,
females.
yeah, look, it's 90% is women.
Exactly. But,
That's just what so. Okay. And also,
is.
too, quite frankly, I'll never forget I was out with some friends one time, and um, this guy wanted me to go to the next bar with him and his buddies. And he was literally pushing me backwards. I had no power, right? I'm a fairly strong individual, but I had no power going backwards. And luckily, some big, very large guy put his arm out because he saw what was happening and stopped the action,
Yeah.
right? And he played right. He's like, hey, sweetheart, I was wondering where you were, like pulled me right in. The guy's left. So there's a physical strength that men have over women, right? Mm-hmm. And so there's that balance of, I may ask you once or twice, but I am going to get what I want because I'm stronger than you, and then you've got the female brain going, well, is this what I'm supposed to do to get, that whole dynamic? And I think that's part of what you said earlier, which I so agree with, is we've got to start teaching our young men how to be gentlemen.
Yeah, we do, but we also have to teach our young men when to be violent. And when to be violent.
Ooh, you just took a left turn. All right.
It's exactly what you said, though, because how often do you watch something happen and you see other men and women, but I'll hold it more, accountable to men, stand there and watch it occur. Yes. At some point, you need to get ready to throw hands and put it into it. And yes, I agree. Like we have to teach that in men. I'm 100% behind. Like we got to teach compassion, but we also have to teach that when somebody is not compassionate, we have to step up to the plate. And I don't care if it's, interject. I don't care if it's call 911. Mm-hmm. It doesn't need to be start recording with your phone. No. It doesn't need to be like tisk tisk. She shouldn't have done this. It shouldn't be like, hey, dude, stop. There has to be a hard line. Like we're ending this now. And
well, it's like the people that are videotaped twice. It's happened in Philly and it's happened in New York on the subway. Someone raping someone and people videotaping it. I'm over here going, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Now, I'm not law enforcement. Okay. I'm not trained to take someone down, but I'll be darned if I sit back and watch someone abuse. That's me.
Yeah.
But I coach people. Right. I do coach people, especially when I'm out in public. I'm like, look, call 911, right? Take picture of the car, take picture of the person, call the people that are trained for that.
Yeah.
Right. Do something versus holding up your video cam. And, and I tell people with the whole George Floyd thing, I said, look, I'd be like, you distract that cop. I'm going in. I'm going to go. That's just who I am.
Yeah.
And not everybody's like that, which is fine. However, when we get done training our kids, we emphasize you can no longer be a bystander. You now know what human trafficking looks like. It looks very similar to abuse. It looks very similar to domestic violence. It looks very similar to teen dating violence. If you know something's going on, you can no longer be a bystander. It's not okay.
No, I think the other thing to stress is, in my opinion, as long as you're a bystander, you're complicit in what's going on. As long as you're watching it occur, as long as you know it's occurring and you're not doing something to intervene, you are as guilty as the person that's doing it.
Yeah, well, we were talking about the CNN guy that was arrested for flying a 9-year-old, a 14-year-old, and the mom went with her. I'm like, over here, where are we? The mom's complicit. Sorry,
100%.
Unpopular, but I'm not going to say anything else because But
no, I agree.
That's where the line comes in with having dialogue with our kids. Right. Mm-hmm. You've got to, and I was having a conversation with somebody yesterday and I said, one of the most powerful things a family can do is the moment everybody walks in the door. Now I know you have 2 phones. Yes. You have a work phone and a personal phone. Oh my God. And a federal phone. Okay. You have 3 phones, put your everybody put their phone in a basket. Right. And for the next 2 hours, we're going to make dinner together. We're going to go for a walk. We're going to do chalk art. If you've got little kids, we're going to go play volley, whatever. You're going to go be together. So you can have that kind of bond with your child. So you'll know when something's off.
Yeah, no, I agree. And that's been my deal. I was blessed to, my dad wasn't always the greatest. My mom wasn't always the greatest, but my mom's a saint. But when they lived together, we had dinner every night at the table growing up. No matter what, we had dinner every night at the table. I don't remember there even being like a free night to go have dinner in the living room.
No picnic dinners in the living room. Come on.
So same thing with me. It's how I grew up. So, come 6 o'clock, we're sitting at that dinner table together and we're having dinner and we're going to talk. Kind of funny, the other day, we, for some reason, I think we got iced out again. But we're so used to sitting at the table. I looked at my son and I was like, I was getting ready to ask how school was today. And he said, yeah, I was getting ready to ask how work was today. And we didn't even go anywhere. But it's just that routine and always being together for that, and it's something as insignificant as dinner, but it's something as significant as dinner.
Absolutely. Well, and in this world, like I feel like before all this happened, we had our kids overscheduled. And I think it was a great opportunity for families to kind of recenter, if so to speak. Yeah. And I think it's also an opportunity for parents to have some new conversations. One of my other favorite assignment videos I give people is the social dilemma. So people can start to really understand what's happening to them on social media platforms.
Yeah.
Right? And it's the same place because a recruiter and a groomer for trafficking can become their quote, quote, boyfriend, correct?
100%.
Right. And that teen dating violence matches right into that kind of space. So, I just encourage all parents that are listening to this now live or when you listen to it later, carve out some quality time with your kids every single day. Every day. It doesn't have to be dinner. I was a single working mom. I didn't get home till 7 o'clock. We had a lot of snack dinners. Okay. It's become one of my favorites, snack dinner. But, we spent that time together chopping up the cheese and chopping up the, scooping the peanut butter out and the celery and all that kind of stuff. So, we had that time together and we'd sit and we'd talk about the day. But we took that time. And to me, that's everything as a parent. And it's super easy. How many times have we walked into a restaurant, family sitting at the table, and they're all like this?
Yeah.
Drives me nutty. And what I'll do, because I always have some of my postcards in my purse, I always do it on the way out the door. I give everybody a little postcard that's got the signs of grooming and recruitment on it. And I'm like, Your children are lovely. I don't know if you know who they're talking to on their cell phones or not, but I invite you to have a conversation. Here's some postcards to enjoy that dialogue. Have a great rest of the evening. And they're all staring at me, but I walk slowly towards the door and I look back. Phones are down. They're looking at the postcard. They're like, oh my God, did you know? So now there's a conversation that sparks. So I'm a huge fan of giving people conversation starters. Okay.
Yeah, we used to have a cup full of conversation starters. They were little strips, almost like a fortune, from a fortune cookie. And it was just a question or a statement. We'd have a big thing of it, and everybody would pass it around the table. You pull yours, and that was your conversation piece for the night. When we're at dinner, we were able to talk about it was, it was, some of them were trivial. When was the last time you had a hot dog? And you'd sit and, I went to the ball game with my dad, and we were at the Astros game, and this happened, and it really just created that discussion, which I think is, again, it doesn't have to be anything significant. It doesn't have to be a, big deal. I think having it in itself is a big deal.
Absolutely.
In 2022.
Whew, yes, absolutely. So there's some statistics about teen dating violence. I'll put the website in the chat, and I'm a huge fan of facts and stories. And you and I both know that I don't state any kind of fact if you can't look it up. That's what, I'm a huge fan of Nick Mick and the hotline, because they actually, people pick up the phone. So there's actual data there. I also am a fan of the International Labor Organization, because I think they do really good work too. But you and I both know people don't self-identify. Mm-hmm. They don't say, oh, hi, by the way, I'm a victim. Hi, by the way, this is happening. So, I like to give people facts, because your brain can retain facts and stories. And it's a great way to start a conversation. So the 1.5 million teenagers that are in violent relationships every year, that's a fact. And a really easy way to start that conversation, Joe, I think, is to be like, hey honey, I was watching this Facebook Live thing tonight with these two pretty funny people, both
one
about
of which was an idiotic hat.
Yeah, but you look good in it. And we were talking about teen dating violence, and did you know, and state the fact. And then that gives that open door for your child to be like, God, I hadn't heard of that, but my friend Sally, now that we're talking about it, she might be, like, it has them start to do the thinking. And that's really what we want families and kids to do. So now we're going to go into the prevention space, right? We've got the education. We're talking about things you can do, empowerment. So, if someone listening now or later feels like they might be in a violent relationship, they might be in a relationship that's heading down that path, Joe, what are some things that they can do? Like, what would you suggest as a, first let's start with a teen and then let's go over to a parent.
I think if you think you're in it, you're in it. If you start thinking this is where I'm at, you're there, or you're as close as you can get, right? So I know that I've never been the victim of domestic violence. I know that, like, I can just say that. If I had to think about it and say, well, was I? Because I probably am. So I think that's the first thing to recognize. If you have to start questioning as to whether or not you're that person, you probably are. I think there's a few things about that. Is A, that's okay. It's not okay that it's happening, but it's okay that you're that person, because you're not the one that chose that. You were literally, like I said earlier, had the water boiled around you. Like that, yes. It was not anything that you've done. So when we look at kids and teens, I think it's really important for that. I think one of the biggest things for teens is you have to know your safe person. I don't care if it's mom or dad. I don't care if it's aunt or uncle, grandma, grandpa. I don't care if it's Susie Q at school counselor, teacher, whoever that person is, that you can go and say, hey, look, I have a problem, and they will help you work through it. You need to go to them. I think that's just one of the most important things that we fail to recognize is, as parents, I like to say, if you have an issue, you come to me. I like to think I'm not always equipped to fix every problem my kid has, right? And he can't be trusted or he can't entrust me to be able to fix everything.
No.
But if he has somebody that can, that's over here, that can say, hey, look, this is the avenue we can take. We can reach out to your dad. We can do this. We can do that. That's really who they really need to open up to. Both teens and adults, I think one of the most important things to go back, is to understand that you are not the cause of that. Therefore, there is nothing to be ashamed of. There's nothing to be embarrassed of. There's nothing to hold you back from saying something, because you did not cause that. Abusers cause that. So I think just being able to understand that A, you're not alone in it, but then B, there are people who actually care, and I think especially for teens, that's tough. I wasn't an overly emotional teenage boy, but I've, raised teenage girl, and, raising a teenage boy. And, there's probably many times that she wasn't overly comfortable coming to me about something. And I get it 100%. But if she had the ability to go to anybody else in the world and say, here's the problem, and then them come to me together, we could totally fix it. When it comes to teen dating violence specifically, one thing I want to flag is not for potential victims or kids. It's for parents. It is very easy to lose our minds, right? You put your hand on my kid, I will kill you. That is also a hindrance to why kids don't come out and say this is what's going on. So understanding that when that happens, we also have to A, keep our cool, B, be the example, but then C, address it by the proper means, and not do what our emotions tell us to do, because again, it would involve a shotgun and a shovel, right? So I'm telling you, I've been there, right? And the shotgun would have been meaningless. I would use the shovel for everything. But like looking at it and understanding that we can't show up with a shotgun and a shovel.
Yeah.
We have to show up and say, hey, look, this sucks. Here's how we're going to get past it. And here's how we're going to do it, the legal, proper means. And not only that, but you also have to understand as parents too, because it's true for both adults and teen and minor victims. They still have an emotional trauma bond to that person. So you're not going to come in and say today, hey, look, this is over, it's done. Like he's this, he's that. We're going to, bury him and all these other things. You have to understand that there is also that bond that's there, and you're going to have to cycle through that and be able to move on from there. And it's not going to be an overnight deal.
No.
It's not.
Yeah. And it's when I talk to kids, we train both parents and kids. And so when I talk to kids, I'm like, look, go home, share this knowledge with your parents. And should you be in a situation that you're uncomfortable with, one, if you're not comfortable talking to your parents, I've got counselors and teachers and everybody in the same room with me. I'm like, you've got people right here that have been through this training with you. Go talk to them. Right.
Yeah.
And at some point in time, you are going to have to include your parents. You just are. And I always share with them, you've got to get, your parents are human too. Mm-hmm. They have human emotions. Okay. And if someone is messing with their child,
it's a death warrant.
They're going to have a reaction. Now then, I said, so you're going to have to give them a little space and grace for that. They're not angry at you. They're angry at this person who's taken advantage of you. And I share the stories, of course, with our kids when they're driving, be safe, and we get the eye roll and I'm fine, whatever. And I'll say, look, sweet pea, it's not you I don't trust. It's everybody else out there. I said, if you're the only one at a four-way stop that's not on your phone, you're the one that's actually going to prevent an accident from happening, right?
Yeah.
And so with the parents, what we coach them is, I said, when your child gets enough courage to come tell you about this, those next 3 seconds are imperative. I go, you've got to take a deep breath, 0 emotion on your face, as challenging as that's going to be. I said, and you just got to look at them and go, it's okay, honey. It's not your fault. I got your back.
Totally.
That's all I got to say. Now you can go scream in a pillow later, right? But in that moment with your child, you've just got to stay with them and let them know you've got your back, because they're petrified of disappointing you.
Yeah. And I think the other thing too, though, is for kids, it's unfortunate, but statistically speaking, somebody that you're talking to about this is probably dealing with the same thing or has, or knows somebody that has. Like, that's a shame, but it doesn't make you any different than anybody else.
Right.
In that, you shouldn't be shameful or not willing to talk.
Well, and it's, and that's the thing that, we know predators use that tactic. They use fear, they use manipulation, they use, well, you wanted it. Okay, well, I kind of didn't have a choice.
Well, and they oftentimes find the same victims, right? I mean, you see the same person that's victimized over and over and over by different men, and it's because of that. They're specifically looking for people, that they can do that to. And
and that's where the letting parents know, it's like, look, their prefrontal cortex, the decision making part of their brain, is not fully developed yet.
Yeah.
So you using the "you should have known better," or "I taught you better than that," or the waggling finger of blame is going to have your child zig not zag into your arms. And that's the biggest piece for us, I think, as parents, is we've got to really start to understand that our children's brains aren't done yet. And it was mid-20s. I now believe, with the advent of social media, that it's late 20s, early 30s. Yet this starts to really be fully developed.
Yeah, I think we need to, across the board, definitionally across the board, minors need to be 25 and under at this point.
I agree. I agree. I agree. They can drive at 16 or 17, but I scared the Jesus out of my daughter, and she didn't get her driver's license until she was 17 and a half, and I said, because look, again, just all the reflexes, everything's just not developed yet. You've got to have time to practice. Now, you live in Waco, Texas. I'm clear kids are driving at 14, but there's no one on the road, so.
I don't know. We're Chip and Joanna Gainesville. We got plenty of traffic. But no, I agree. And I mean, it's recently my son has his permit. Recently we were driving and he reached over and turned the radio and I lost it. I'm like, if you're paying attention to that, you ain't paying attention to that, So.
Yeah, well, it's true, and how many accidents have been taken because people are texting, or people are, and because we're living in our cars. So they've created this whole environment. Have you been in a Tesla yet?
No, I've been in a truck or two.
truck or two. Okay. A Tesla. I've been in 3. And I'm not exaggerating. There's a computer screen this big in the middle of the console between you and the passenger.
I believe it.
How can you even pay attention to what's happening in front of you with this massive computer screen in your face? Now, these are the self-driving cars too, by the way.
Yeah. Which is always great.
I got a lot of things to say about that. But back here, it's like, yeah, okay, that's a great solution. We'll just put everybody in self-driving cars. Perfect. Not a problem. But, I think having that ability to fully understand where your children are at developmentally and bringing compassion to that space will make all the difference in the world for not only your relationship, but for them. Our kids are going to learn at their own pace. And parenting, I don't know about you, but I didn't grow up with one of these.
No.
Yeah. Yeah.
I did not have one of those. The best I had in my late teens was a pager.
Yeah. So, you've got parents that are dealing, kids know more than they do on this thing. Mm-hmm. And so you've got parents that are confused and overwhelmed. You've got kids that are running circles around their parents, which they immediately discredit their parent because the parent doesn't know more than them.
Yep.
Right? They're supposed to be all know, all end all. It really has become the perfect storm for predators, whether it's a boyfriend as teen dating violence, whether it's an online predator, trying to exploit your child, or it's inside the realm of domestic violence. I work really closely with DCF here, and they said that reports dropped dramatically during the 12 months that our schools were closed here because the reporters couldn't check in on their kids.
Yeah, mandated reporters weren't there.
And we've got people enclosed in an environment with their abuser.
Yeah.
You know, teen suicide went up, in particular, teen girl suicide went up 51%. My best friend's a funeral director out in California. She told me that suicide rates for young men 18 to 34 was up 108%. You know, so this is a very challenging time. And I would assert we're all dealing with a little PTSD. Mm-hmm. We're all dealing with a little gaslighting, you know, and it's easy to want to have that connection with another human.
Yeah.
And dropping the, you know, radar, your spidey senses a little bit to know, is this a good person or not? Is this a person I want to be with or not? You know, yeah. and because there's this experience as a human being, we want to be connected. We want to be loved. We want to belong. We want to be part of a tribe or a team or something. And if that's been taken away from me, I'm going to find it wherever I can. And if it's not in my home with my family, I'm going to go find it out somewhere else.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, okay. It's good. We've got some people listening, so I don't know if anybody has any questions for you. I know Kim's on, Terry's on, Nicole with the pink hair is on.
I like her hair. I'm not gonna lie. If I had hair, I'd totally be down to do it pink.
You would have pink hair too?
I would. I would like match my shirt.
Yeah, exactly. And your running shorts.
Yeah. That was one of the joys of COVID. I could be, you know, like in a full suit on top and running shorts on top.
Yeah, no one knew. Well, I had to get dressed. Like, it just was one of those things I had to get dressed. Because, you know, what if you had to get up?
I would slide off camera and walk away.
So you had the slide going on. I got you. I so got you. Terry, we appreciate you participating in the conversation. And by the way, she agrees with you that 25 and under should be.
Terry's amazing. She's an amazing human being. Love me some Terry.
Yeah.
And you must respect the Joe hat. Yeah.
Yeah, good. Yay. And you must respect the Joe.
Terry also has learned to respect the Joe eating while texting and driving 85 to 95 miles an hour with a knee through the countryside. So
okay. Yeah, you gotta appreciate someone like that for sure. Yeah, I learned a long time ago, as I've got a couple of friends that drive professionally, and I'm just doing my thing. It doesn't even faze me, you know. And I'll pretty much spend most of my time hanging on to the, you know, the thing on the side, so I don't go flying into them. But yeah. Anyway, well, Joseph Scaramucci, again, you know, I started this saying you're one of my favorite human beings on the planet, and I will continue. Oh yeah,
so there goes Jessica Lamb, who is also
But wait, he's got 3. He has 3.
Yeah, all right, that's embarrassing. Yeah.
Yeah, so just, you know, thank you for being on with me tonight. You know, you are one of my favorite human beings on the planet. Yay, Penny was on too. We love us some Penny as well.
Yeah, Penny's awesome.
Yeah, just extraordinary crew of human beings. You know, and the thing that I fully appreciate about the anti-trafficking, I'm just going to call it crew, is, you know, we're all in the same game together. And the only way we're going to beat this is by doing it together. You know, and one of my favorite sayings is none of us is as smart as all of us. And that's what it's going to take, is all of us to collaborate and have conversations. And even when we have, especially when we have opposing points of view, it's going to make the solution better. Yeah. Because you're looking at it from every single angle there is to look at it and come up with the best solution. And I'm just a huge fan of that. So thanks for being on with me tonight. Thank you, everybody that participated and listened and tuned in. And there's lots of Joe love on here, by the way.
And also fear of driving with.
Memo there's also that. yourself. And you drive a truck, right? So then there's like,
Yeah, I do drive a truck. I drive a truck. I think me and Terry had a little small SUV in Wyoming, but yeah, I generally drive a truck.
yeah. Well, you'll know if anything happens, you're generally bigger than everybody else that's in the
She,
way, unless it's
she
some.
could tell you the most dangerous thing that ever happened was when I was given a Dodge Challenger with a Hemi for a rental car in Wyoming. That was a
Oh my
bad decision
God.
on Alamo. So, all
Oh my
right.
God.
It was great talking to you.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. Yeah, they should know. Joseph Scaramucci's coming in. They'll give him the Toyota
Yeah,
Corolla
yeah, exactly,
with the
exactly.
4 cylinders.
Oh gosh, that was a near death experience with that car. So,
Oh my
all right,
God.
it was wonderful talking to you.
Yeah. And Kim Curry says, "You're amazing, Joe. You need to come to Florida and join us at our gala on March 10th." So
I'm in. I'm in. Let's make it
there you
happen.
go. Good. Yeah, it'll be a good time. We'll have a good time. All right, y'all. Thank you for hanging with us. Thank you for participating. Joe, check your phone, check your text, and we will see all of you around. I could say campus, but I'm going to say around the ranch because you're from Texas. Good night, y'all.